Hey, everybody. We are on to another fun episode here, season 2 of the Utah High School Hoops podcast. And I'm excited because, as you know, if you've been listening to this, I'm new to Utah, but I'm a proud owner of a Denver Nuggets championship tattoo. I love the state of Colorado. There are neighbors, and it was cool to be able to connect up with Coach James Jansen. He is down at Fort Lewis, and he's going to come on and talk with us just a little bit about his history. We'll talk about the program and even a little bit on how to find and maximize your time at some of these elite camps. I know that we're getting a bunch of questions about that. And so hopefully you'll learn something and be able to learn a little bit about what they have going on down in beautiful, and I mean beautiful, Durango, Colorado. If you ever get a chance to go down there, maybe for an elite camp this weekend, who knows? But the Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory is down there, and it's unbelievably scenic and beautiful. So let's get here to this interview with Coach James Jansen. This is the Utah High School Hoops podcast, your source for sometimes informative, but always entertaining coverage of the Utah High School hoop scene. With your host, Adam Peak. Hey, what's going on, Coach?
How are we doing?
I'm good. I just realized I've requested some new podcast intro music from my producer, who also happens to be my 17-year-old child. And I'm like, oh man, I wanted to get it for season 2, but we're
you better be careful asking for music from teenagers nowadays. You're gonna have to vet some of these proposals.
Now listen, I will tell you that I think I've done a pretty good job because he wears like Tribe Called Quest and Outkast t-shirts, and
okay, all right.
He hit me up the other day and he was like, "Hey Pop, have you heard the new Black Thought and Danger Mouse album?" And I was like, "I'm glad I'm hearing about this from you. I think we've gone about this the right way."
That's funny because chances are I was going to start with something Lil.
We were just talking about that last night.
Somebody Lil. That's what's coming.
Dude, we were going through and he was like, we were having this conversation as a family. Like this is what happens in our house. He was like, You can put Lil in front of almost any name, and I bet you there's a rapper out there. And sure enough, we went through like all of our kids' names, and you could find like, Lil Emmett, Lil Vivian. I'm like, oh my gosh. It all started way back in the day, though, with Lil Bow Wow. I believe he even predated Lil Wayne.
He did.
Memory serves. Well, this is not the nostalgic 90s rap podcast, though I would thoroughly enjoy that. Right. This is the Utah High School Basketball Podcast. And, Coach, I know that there's a lot of people here in Utah that are probably familiar with you, not necessarily, because is this your first year at Fort Lewis?
Yep, first year.
Okay, so it's your first year at Fort Lewis, but prior to that, you were at Treasure Valley, and there are there's a pretty good connection between Utah high school basketball players and Treasure Valley. So, I'm sure there's some people like, oh, hey, what's up, Coach? Hopefully they're waving to, nothing, but let this be the reminder to hit him up and say hello, because he probably misses all of his fantastic people here in Utah. But why don't you just talk a little bit about your journey in coaching here? I know you've been to some various different levels, and I think that's going to help inform a lot of our conversation around, talking about current states of recruiting and what's going on. And, part of that is like these camps and what you got going at Fort Lewis and all that kind of stuff. So let's just first start with, who the heck are you, Coach?
Yeah, I appreciate it. Well, I grew up in Northern California. That's where I spent my high school days. I went to high school, played for a guy named Todd Franklin, of which some of you might recognize the name because that was my first job that I ended up getting in the college world at Simpson University. But after graduating from high school up there, I went and played a couple of years at Bethany University, and then kind of transitioned right into coaching. I knew it was something that I wanted to do. I even coached. I helped out a local high school, San Lorenzo Valley. I helped out a local high school for a year. And I just knew I wanted to coach. And so I've coached everything from 7th grade boys, 8th grade boys, all the way up through freshman, JV, and varsity. And then going through the ranks of junior college and NAI and so forth. But I remember it was 2020. No, it was not 2020. That's when I moved to Idaho. Gosh, it was 2016, I would say. And I was working for the state. I had a really good job, but I'm not one of those guys that can just sit behind a desk all day and just look at a wall or stare at a computer. And so I was missing, what I wanted to do. Even though I was making good money and I had 2 kids at the time, I was trying to figure out, what do I want to do? And I thoroughly loved coaching. I drove 45 minutes one way each day. I got off work early and I headed to practice up at Ponderosa High School to go work with 2 really good friends of mine, Justin Williams and Troy Selvey, who got me, heading down this path of getting my master's and really diving into coaching and so forth. And I wanted that opportunity to coach. And so I got a call from Todd, my old high school coach, who I'm still good friends with today. And he was going to be taking over the job at Simpson University and offered me a spot to come coach with him. I was coaching AAU and grassroots before everyone and their uncle popped up a team. So I was coaching with those guys and loving it. And I was familiar with a lot of the high school and the AAU organizations and things like that in California. And so it was a good fit for me. And I moved back to where I'm from, Redding, and I was able to coach there for 3 years with him and loved it.
Is that where Simpson is? Is in Redding?
Yeah, Redding, about maybe 2 hours, depends on who's driving, an hour and 45 minutes, right? 2 hours to the Oregon border. So it's pretty far up there. And then from there, before my youngest at the time was getting ready to head to kindergarten almost. And we're kind of trying to figure out what we want to do and where we want to be and where we want to raise a family and things like that. And so, just looking at different options, kind of all over the place, and got in touch with Colby Blaine up at the College of Idaho, who is still a really good friend of mine and mentor of mine. Ended up joining him for a couple of years and coaching with him and learning a ton, right? And having a ton of success and just learning what it takes to be successful daily. What does that routine look like? Mm. And so I still use a lot of those same things today with what I do. And I really used it when 2 years into that, I took over as the head coach at a junior college. I had never been at the junior college level, and everyone always told me like, oh, you're not going to be able to do what you did at C of I and Simpson with JUCO kids. And, it was what it was, but, took a year to get going, took over a program that hadn't won a game the previous year. And we had some success. We competed, and I liked kind of the direction we were heading. And then in year 2, we won an East Region championship and set a record for school wins in a season and had a ton of success. And then one of my close friends, Jordan Mast, gave me a call on a Saturday afternoon and evening and was talking to me about this potential situation. And he said, I should know tomorrow, we'll see, how it went. I said, they're going to call you on a Sunday, and he's like, yeah. And I said, all right. And then I'll never forget it. Sunday, we're sitting at home and my wife's asleep on the couch and we're just kind of relaxing, and phone rings at like 2 p.m. I was like, oh boy. And he calls me and he's like, let's go. And so I had to get up off the couch because I didn't want to wake up my wife. And so we're just chopping it up and figuring it out. And we're trying to talk details. He's like, I don't know those answers yet. And I said, well, I don't either. So I said, well, let me talk to my wife and see. And Monday we drove up and checked out Durango. Had never been to Durango, been to Denver a few times, but that's 6 hours away, right? 6.5 away here. So, you said it. It's beautiful. It's gorgeous, and we're definitely lucky to be here. My kids have been jumping full straight into things. We moved, and that was a Saturday. I reached out to people about like, how do I get my kids plugged into this or that? And man, Monday we were picking up football gear. So
that's awesome.
It's been a good transition, and it's been an exciting one. It's been a lot of work early on because we had to sign 13 new players and so forth, and so. That was a lot of work, but it's been fun. It's been a really good transition.
Were you able to kind of lean? You talk about this history, right? And at the NAI level, and the correct me if I'm wrong. Treasure Valley's in the NWAC. Is this correct?
Yep.
Yeah. So the NWAC with JUCO, which is a great league. I had Coach Drake on season 1 on the podcast.
Yeah.
So some really great people and a lot of connections into the Utah community, obviously. But were you able to kind of lean into a lot of those connections? You talk about being involved in AAU way back before anybody who had a whistle could could create an
Yeah.
AAU program. Was that helpful to be able to get those 13 players signed? And you're just getting to practice right now. Like, I'm sure you're like, I don't know if it's helpful or not, but we're here. We're going to give it a
Yeah.
shot.
No, this business and sometimes I think people forget it. Like this is a relationship business, and
Mhm.
I would argue to say that any business is a relationship business. I don't care if it's running a Starbucks or a Dutch Brothers or running a high level program of a sports team or anything. It's relationships, because you can't do this stuff by yourself. It takes a team and it takes a village. Like that saying doesn't stop when we get out of our adolescent years, right? Of it takes a village. No, it takes a village to have a successful program that's ran at a high level. And so, fortunately, I've made some really good friends along the way, and dove into it, head first, 2 feet first. One thing you learn about me is 2 feet is a big concept for me, and everything we do. And so I dove 2 feet in, and started getting on the phone and making calls. I mean, I think on the drive back, I don't know if my wife had knew we had accepted the job yet, but on the drive back from Durango when we had visited, I think that's an 11 and a half hour drive. I think I was on the phone for maybe 9 of it, right?
I
And the
bet.
only reason it wasn't that whole time is so we were going over the passes. And so, you're on the phone and trying to see what guys are doing and where they're at and what's going on, and how to fill out the rest of the staff, and what Coach Jordan needs, and things like that, because I'm stepping into that assistant role again. And so, those relationships are everything. And I feel very, very fortunate to have some great relationships with some really, really, not just coaches, but people. So that's definitely a huge part.
Yeah, that's awesome. And it's one of my favorite parts of the state, to be honest with you. And I know people might get sick of me talking about how much I like Colorado. I do love living in Utah, by the way, but been down to Durango a few times for work, and I just think
Yep.
it's the campus is beautiful. That would be I would think it would be an easy sell in terms of the proximity and location to a state like Utah, but also if you're going to have to go to college somewhere, it's not a bad place to it's not a bad place to have to hang out. It's a cool little
No,
college town.
I've had some people that aren't familiar. Man, how do you recruit to Durango? I say, have you ever been to Ontario, Oregon? Like we can recruit to Ontario, we can recruit to Durango. I mean, we've got a big airport that multiple airlines fly in and out of, multiple flights a day, and direct flights to Denver and Phoenix and Houston and Dallas, and it's not as small as people think, right?
No.
In terms of the four corners, like you said, you've got New Mexico and Arizona and Utah and even Texas right here, and you're in Colorado, and you're a day's drive, six and a half away from Denver. Like it is a beautiful, beautiful spot. And they asked, how do you recruit? And I said, well, have you been there? I said, just get a kid there and let them see, let their family see, like, man, this is gorgeous, right? The food is amazing and the hospitality is amazing, and the weather is awesome, right? People are like, man, how are you going to deal with the snow? It's like snow is a lot of places, right? Unless you're in California, you deal with some sort of snow, or Arizona, right? Those are the only two states you're dealing with some sort of weather. But it's been great. I mean, it's sunshines 300 days plus a year here in Durango, and so I'm excited.
You've been fully indoctrinated with all the Colorado lingo. I
Hey
told that
man,
to everybody, but it's
you
true
gotta
though.
dive,
It's
you gotta dive
the
in.
sunniest state. The sunniest state in the U.S. is Colorado.
Yep.
I love it. Let me ask you a quick question here, because you're talking about, like the importance of relationships. I think that there's a bit of a misnomer, and it's unfortunate, but I think this is true given like just how crazy the landscape is, especially for high school athletes. There's this idea that it's like, well, if you can play, you'll get found. And there's a part of me that's like, that's true for like Isaiah Harwell, like that's true for a lot of guys where it's like, hey, if you can play, you're going to get found. But there's this whole, I don't know, this is my theory, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. There's this whole grouping of players who can play basketball, and they don't reach out. They're not very good at communication. maybe they're in the gym a lot, right? I don't really know, but nobody knows who they are because they're not active in their own recruitment. Am I crazy, or is that like a real thing that might happen nowadays with kids? Or the opposite happens, which is they're not putting in the work and they're only on social media and they're only promoting, and then they get into a game and you're just like, oh my gosh. We're not going to get into specifics, obviously, but I'm just saying it seems like there's this weird imbalance right now, especially with high school kids, where they either think like, well, I just play basketball, but I don't have to work on my network, right? I don't have to reach out to coaches. I just play and then they'll come find me. Or the kids who are like, I don't have to really work on my game. I have my Instagram followers and I've got my highlight tapes. Am I
Yeah.
crazy in these two
Well, it's a
things?
broad spectrum because I just, I've in the last week I've been on the road and in different gyms watching, and you see both, right? For me, and this is solely for me, and I think it's probably for more people, but I only want to speak for myself. There's people when my phone rings, like I unequivocally trust, right? Like if they say, "Hey, this dude, you've got to take a look, you've got to pay attention," right? Get them on campus, check this out. I trust, and when they're calling me to tell me that, I fully dive into it and watch film and do a little research on social media. I don't just go through their feed. I go through what they've liked and I look what pictures they posted, and I've looked to see who they're hanging with, and I've done deep dives. And there's some people that call and you're like, I'm never going to take a kid from this person. And that's just the reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times what I don't think these kids understand when they decide who am I going to hitch my wagon to in the AAU world or scene, like if that person or that program is not respected by a lot of people, even if they are letting you play for free, like you're kind of spinning your wheels, right? You're kind of spinning your wheels like that hamster, and you're not going to get a whole lot out of it. On the flip side, if you're playing for an organization and for people that are well respected in the basketball community, you might get over recruited, right? That's the other caveat to it too. There will nowadays, this is for a number of reasons. There are a number of kids who are going to get recruited because they have Instagram followers. There's no doubt about it, right? And that's just part of it. Now, are they going to be long lived? Because it's just not going to work out if that's their only claim to success is social media following. Like, yeah, that's going to be tough as well. So there's a huge balance. But the old "you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with," like that is so true. And if you've got people in your corner that are not just answering the call for you, but advocating for you, that's when real success and real recruitment happens. Because the truth is, we get probably 9 to 15 emails a day, right, from kids that are trying to find spots and situations and this and that, and it's impossible to get back to every single one of them. Some coaches say they do, and I'm curious what they do with the other 12 minutes of their day, because that would take forever, right, to get back to every single one. Because not only do your phones ring, your DMs, have messages in them, and your texts have messages in them from coaches and things like that. And so it's a lot, right? So how do we narrow down what we do? Well, you got to be with people you trust. You can trust their evaluation, but I think the part that gets kids the most is not everything is cookie cutter. Every program is different, right? Even at the NAIA level, even just take the Cascade League, for example. All those schools are recruiting different niches, recruiting different budgets, recruiting different systems, recruiting different scenarios, recruiting different relationships. It's the same with where we're at in the RMAC. Every program is different. Oh, how do they take that kid as a player? Like, I'm way better than him. Well, you have no idea, right? Their uniqueness to their fit, right? He might be on a partial scholarship. He might have unbelievable grade scenarios. He might provide depth at this spot, and they've had the conversation. Look, you're not going to play for the first 2 years, but if you pay your dues, like we could see you getting in. His high school coach might have been the same coach as the assistant coach that's there, right? And so when that high school coach calls the assistant coach and says, look, I've got this kid, he's going to be amazing, he's going to make every single one of your kids better in practice, he's going to push it, he's going to be your best kid off the floor, the professors are going to rave about, that might be why he's there, right? And he had his high school coach advocating for him, whatever it is. Every situation is so unique, but today we compare, right? We want to play the compare game. And so it's hard. It's hard to get kids to understand that and parents to understand that.
I love that. And it's because basketball is a team sport, and the team is from from the top down to the bottom. It's like, well, guys, I've told this to plenty of kids. I'm like, there's one basketball in the court. And so you may be a good scorer in your conference or even for your AAU team, but not every team is going to be filled with people who can the only thing they can really do is put the ball in the bucket. Actually, that would be a pretty terrible team. I don't think they'd win many games. Yeah. And so I'm like, well, what is the thing? I try to tell kids and parents, I'm like, if you were a college coach, and a lot of college coaches, assistants and head coaches, are banking their family's livelihood on whether or not you can do something on the basketball court, because you just outlined your career. You've been in various different levels, right? Like it's a brutal job. Like you signed up for it, so I get to say it, but it can be a really brutal job. And talking to a lot of college coaches, right? Like you're only as good as your last season. And so I'm like, you have to understand that if you're going to try to play at any college at any level, what is the thing that you do that a college coach could bank on? It could be, like you said, it could be grades and it could be work ethic. I remember I was sitting there watching a game with the coach, and I won't say who he is, but we were watching a game and he was like, I really like that player. I look up his stats. He's like 4 points a game. I'm like, you really? And he lists all the reasons why. It's like, I don't really care about his stats. Like, I can just tell from like how he moves, and I can tell by look at how he interacts with his teammates on the bench, and like look how he guards, and he's got a high motor. And he's like, I don't care that he only scores 3 points a game. I really like him. And that was like this moment for me where I was like, wow, this is not what kids and parents think. This isn't really about all of that. And the various levels all have dudes. There's guys that you're gonna probably go up against in the RMAC who were top 10 in their class in the state of Colorado, or player of the year in 5A, and had plenty of D1 offers and went and couldn't cut it, and or decided they wanted to stay close to home for whatever reason, right? Like, but there are D1 players at NAIA schools, at D2 schools, plenty at JUCO schools these days. And so I don't know. I think you hit the nail on the head there. I do want to pivot into something though here real quick, because I think we could hang out on that topic for a while, but we're already 23 minutes in, which is fantastic. So before the call, we were talking a little bit about, you guys have an elite camp that's coming up, and it might be too soon because it's this weekend, which would be, I don't know what, the 24th, is that the date?
21st.
No. 21st. Oh yeah, the 24th is a week from today. The 21st. So getting a plane ticket from Salt Lake City to Durango might be a little bit difficult, but if you can pull it off, then you should probably go check it out. I'll have a link down there. But I think more important than that is something that you were saying that you do at these camps, and I want you to maybe talk about how do you maximize and even vet some of these elite camps. But you talk to parents and players about social media, and like you will actually sit down and have conversations with the parents, right? At some of these, or the players, or
So
I think that like parents and players just think like, well, I just get a jersey and I go out, they roll the ball out, we play fives, I got to go get my buckets so that I can get noticed. And you're like, no, we're a lot more intentional with our camp than those.
No, you're 100% right. And let's be honest, everyone does camps, right? Everyone does camps. But one thing one thing I do try and pride myself on is in everything I do, like, how do I do it different? How do I provide value, right? I don't want to just have a kid come spend their hard-earned money, or their parents or their grandparents or their aunt, uncles hard-earned money to come here and just roll a ball out. Like, that's never what I wanted. And even when I was at Treasure, never what I wanted. I wanted them, even if it wasn't a roster spot, which at Treasure, I think we signed like nine or so kids that came over a 2-year stretch. We had just done 3 years, because we had 3 camps over those 2 years. So we had signed, and we had offered even more kids, right, out of that camp. So it was definitely something we use as a tool to see kids. For me, like, I'm never going to offer a kid unless I see him in person. It's not going to happen. There's a lot more that goes on. Like you said, how do they come off the floor and talk to their teammates? How do they do things when they're not the main focus? That's what a lot of coaches are watching, because if we know about you, we know you're already capable of the things on the floor that we want. What's everything else do? How does all that look, and how does all that function? So I really have to see a kid before I trust taking it to my head coach and saying, hey, I'm going to put my stamp on this guy, right? We do our elite camp a little different. Everything we do is a competition. You're competing for, whether it be timed or whether it be point based. There's a winner and a loser, because everything has a winner and a loser. That's a whole nother topic. It made me think of another scenario. Shout out Clemmer.
I learned that, by the way, when I was at CSU, and Buzz Williams, who's now obviously down at A&M, but he was one of the assistant coaches, and he would always say that in practice. He is everything you would think that Buzz Williams is. That's who he is in practice.
Yeah.
And everything had a winner and a loser.
Well, it made me think, because I'm big on that, right? But there's sidebar here, because I got to throw a shout out, because they've shaped the way I've thought a lot. There's a company called Clemmer, and it's basically personal development, personal mastery. And there's a scenario where it teaches you, maybe it's not as black and white as it seems, and I'll leave it at that, because you have to go experience it to understand it. But in our world, right, this is something I've battled with. In our world, there's always a winner and a loser when the shot clock and the scoreboard, ticks 0. And so we want these high school kids, to understand it. Sometimes their high school practices aren't as intense. Well, when someone's winning and someone's losing, they're playing pretty hard. And so we'll compete like that in a lot of drills. We have our players here kind of coaching them up as well, involved with them and teaching them and showing them, not doing anything crazy. I mean, they're not doing the drill. They're just there. They're around, so that when they're in the back of the line, they can say, hey, when you did this, think about that, or whatever. So they get interaction with our guys. And then, our staff is there as a whole, and we're coaching and instructing, not just rolling out. We're instructing. And that'll be our morning. Like, it's just drill work, right? And talking about competition, and talking about concepts and philosophy and different things like that. Because there's a million ways to skin a cat. There's a million ways to win basketball games. There really is. Now, there's some common denominators, right? But there's a lot of different ways to do things.
By the way, winning a basketball game, way more fun than skinning a cat. Just for the record, I would.
That is true. That is true.
It's such a strange phrase I think about all the time. Like,
I know.
You can kill 2 birds with 1 stone. I'm like, why are we murdering
2
all
birds
these
with 1 stone? But as coaches are going through those drills, and if we have enough parents, which it sounds like this weekend we will, I think we've got like 40 plus kids signed up for camp, which is awesome. And some parents have asked about it. We're going to take the parents to their own room, and we're going to have a conversation with them. And I've got a little script that I go over, right? And I'll save it, but we talk about how can you as a parent help your child in this process, right? And what does that look like for you? And we'll talk about everything from the recruiting process to the financial pieces and to everything. And sometimes it lasts 30 minutes, and sometimes it lasts an hour, right? It just depends on which group of parents you got in there and what kind of questions you get asked. And then we break back for lunch, because the guys have been going for 2.5, 3 hours. And, we'll break for lunch. And then after lunch, we'll talk about, we'll have the same breakaway with the guys. And let's talk about social media. Let's talk about dual enrollment. Let's talk about, what makes you recruitable. Let's talk about all these things, right? Let's talk about your FAFSA. Let's talk about anybody that's not a Division I program is stacking scholarships, and even then, like not all Division I's are created equal. There's a whole nother rabbit hole we can go down.
Yep.
So how do you make yourself appealing, right? How do you make yourself appealing? And so we talk about those conversations with those guys, and it usually lasts 30 to 45 minutes. But they're going to walk away thinking about something in that room off the floor, right? Thinking about something off the floor. And then we get back to playing, and we do play, like we do play 5-on-5, and we try and see what kids can take the concepts that we talked about before lunch. Now that we're after lunch, use some of those concepts, and let's see who can do that, right? And full transparency, I've refunded kids money. Like if they are able to send me film, like if I don't know who they are, and like, coach, we registered for elite camp, excited to see you. Here's some film I have, and Colton, as my former assistant, can witness. I've told the kid, hey, I don't think this is going to be a fit. Here's your money back. That doesn't normally happen, right? Now, I've also had some parents say, look, on the registration, hey, my son might be one of the worst one at your camp, but he wants to come, he wants to learn, he wants to get better. Just know that. It's like, okay, they know where they're at, as opposed to a kid trying to spend his last $100 to get somewhere and he doesn't have a real opportunity, right? And so I really try and find that balance, because I have 3 kids myself, 2 boys, that are full on athletes, and we pay for them to go to camps, and I want them to get their value. So I would imagine a parent that sends their kid somewhere wants to get their value, and so that's just kind of how we approach it. But there are really good situations, and there are some situations where you're wasting money, and if you're not getting actively recruited by high major Division I schools, like registering to go to their elite camp, while it could be a phenomenal experience, and if that's what you're going after, then do it, because that's what I think people miss. They think I'm just going for the scholarship opportunity. Well, one, you're not even going for a scholarship most of the times. You're going for an opportunity as a whole, right? Mm-hmm. You'd be glad and thrilled to get a walk on, right? But if you're going for the experience to learn and grow and meet these guys and just grow as an individual, like, why is that so undervalued nowadays? We'll get a credit card transaction from a PlayStation purchase because our kid bought some V-Bucks or a new skin on Call of Duty. I'm like, shoot, that's a lot of money. Well, we just gave them 8 hours in a gym, and it's $100 or $65. Like, you're learning through that whole process, and that's what I want out of people that come to camp, especially here at Fort Lewis or wherever I'm at. I want them to feel like they got something out of their time, right? Not just a 5-on-5, 24-hour fitness rec league. Go down to the Y, get a run in.
Yeah, it's a mixed bag, as I'm sure you've heard, right? And I do think, kind of piecing all of this together, and I have one final question for you here as we kind of wrap up after this, but piecing everything together, I would say, like, it sounds like there's this idea that parents should do a little bit of, do some research, right? We have the internet now. Ask around, whether it's a trainer or a program, or even the high school where your child's at. Ask around and do some research, because those are the people who I think are going to help navigate, especially early on. When you're in 8th and 9th grade, it's like you want to be aligned with people who are going to tell you the truth and who are going to be able to help you navigate through this stuff. And certainly there are people who are doing it for those reasons, and then there are people who are doing it because they just want your money, and they're probably not going to tell you the truth, right? And it's all over the place. But then, like, as you kind of progress, like, be willing to go and put yourself out there. Like you said, enjoy the process. I remember we had no business going to I took my son to Southwestern College in Winfield, Kansas for a camp. And he was like 14 years old, and we had no idea. I had an awesome time. Like we ate some great food. It was a fun drive. We learned
Yep.
all about it. He got to go compete against seniors in high school. And we watched a football game. We walked around the campus, and I'm like, this was fantastic. Like, is he ever gonna? I have zero idea, right? But like that time between him and I, this is what I think parents really miss out on is like, yes, you're trying to get some sort of offer, some sort of scholarship, whatever it is, but like if you have a kid who's willing to put in the work, like, and just enjoy the time with them. Don't get so hung up on all the other crap. Like, just enjoy the ride. Like that's what I just wish everybody would know. And so with that, I just kind of want to ask you for the last question, which is, it's a long form podcast. We don't tend, there's no high school kid who's probably listened to 35 minutes of us talk, right? But there are parents who do. And because we have better attention spans than the doom scroll 30-second clip generation. Sorry, high schoolers. Maybe I'll clip this part so they can hear. But if you could talk to the parents, like what's a couple of pieces of advice that you would give to parents who have kids who have aspirations to play at an NAIA level, a JUCO level, at a D2 level? What's something that you would love to tell? It's probably something you probably tell them at your elite camp, so they could go attend in Durango. Let's pretend like they can't make it this weekend. So, what's some advice you'd give to them?
Just make sure your kid's enjoying it. Like so many parents get caught up in the hoopla of it, but make sure you're enjoying it, right? If your kid's having fun, then you've got to be happy with that yourself. Like that's at the end of the day, like our goal as parents, we want our kids to have fun. We want them to enjoy their time. If it's something serious that they want to pursue, then as a parent, we want to try and open every door we can to make that possible for them. Just make sure your kid's having fun. And I mean, you said it, man, you took a trip with your kid to go to camp. I mean, that's a memory. We always talk about, buying memories and not gifts, but dude, that's a memory that you guys get to enjoy, and so just enjoy it. Just enjoy the process of things. And unfortunately, Joel Embiid has ruined that saying for us, right? But golly. But
he does not enjoy playing basketball in Denver, because I don't think he suited up against Jokic in Denver. It's like 2000.
There could be other reasons involved with him not playing in Denver.
He's ducking the smoke, Joel. Yeah. You're ducking the smoke.
But another guy I know, he used the saying, "Enjoy the journey." Like that. That's truly what it is. This is a journey, and so often, myself included, we're thinking about the end result, and that's really not what we should be thinking about, because the end result will take care of itself if we focus on the little things along that journey that we do really well, right? The results are already set. The results are already done. We can't change the results, but you can sleep better at night if you said, man, I've done everything I need to do. And if it works out the way we want it to, then man, the world is good and happy and blah, blah, blah. If it doesn't work out, I'm still going to sleep at night going, hey, I did everything I could. Right. And that's part of it. So just enjoy the process, because this is a crazy business. This is super crazy. Like when you think about it, right? We got kids making, $1 million in NIL deals and free trucks getting passed out at Utah football and Shadur Sanders handshakes being looked at in end of game lines and, like it's just crazy, like where this is all evolved to, right? You got to find some humor in it, because if you don't, you'll get stressed out.
As a CSU grad and fan, that hurts just a little bit. But you don't. If you're Braden, if you're Fowler Nicolosi, like don't run your mouth, dude, and then not back it up. So yeah, I totally agree, right? Like the whole landscape.
Yeah,
I get it.
I can see both sides. It's hard, but at the same time too, like we're asking 18, 19, 20-year-old kids to make the right decision and be the bigger person. And should he shake his hand? Maybe, probably. I can see where he gets frustrated and not. Did he lay down at night and probably go, man, I probably should have just done it and hit him up and said, man, why'd you do that? Who knows? I get both sides of it, but it also is teaching moment for us with our kids too. Like it's tough. Sometimes you don't always make the right decision, you know. But
Yep.
I'll tell you one thing: you probably would never hear if he called he called him and said, "Hey man, I should have shook your hand." You know, that's on me. I was a little frustrated. You probably won't ever hear that, because why would we share that? That's not clickbait.
I mean, I'm not gonna lie. If it's Shador Sanders, we'd probably hear about it.
Maybe
we did hear
yeah.
about when Travis Hunter got injured, you know, and he brought I can't remember the safety's name now. It's escaping me.
Yeah.
If you heard him, right? Like he had him come down to see you, and they made some videos about like reconciliation. I thought that was super cool.
Yeah.
But I totally get it, but you're right. The greater point is the landscape is sort of constantly shifting. I mean, I saw an article. I don't even know if this is true, but I saw an article that like I think that D2 coaches can now run their own AAU programs and use their facilities or something like that. Like I don't know how any of this legislation is, but I'm like, the point is stuff is always changing and you can't control that, right? So don't worry about the transfer rules and the NIL deals and the this and the that. And it's like, just in the moment, like you put it perfectly, right? In the moment, just enjoy that process, enjoy that day. And I would say if you're focused on being around good people, and it seems like if your child, like you said, loves it and is having fun and is focused and loves the work, because this isn't for I think the last player, we had Sam Merrill and Frank Jackson, two players who played in public high schools in Utah who have played in the NBA in the last like 12 years.
Yeah.
So statistically, that is not an outcome that's going to happen. It's a zero statistically. So it's like, just and by the way, if your kid fails and doesn't make, it to college, as you use air quotes, that doesn't mean that you failed. It means you've probably learned a whole bunch of stuff. Like your kid's success is not your success. It's their success. And
yeah.
That just drives me crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, Coach, we've been chatting here for a while. I'm sure you have to answer every email. You've already gotten 6 emails already today that you have to respond to.
we had 6 a.m. workouts this morning. We got it in, got it done. So I've got the rest of my day to dive into some stuff. But yeah, we got it.
And enjoy the fall, right? Are the leaves changing there in Durango yet?
It started to. We've got some weather. We've got some weather that's happening right now. That's how it tells me it's basketball season. So we've got a few more weeks before we actually start practice. Right now, we're still limited in our hours, only 4 on the floor. And so we're trying to figure out how to make best use of that, of our time, especially with a full new group of guys and so forth. So I won't be outside too much for the next few months.
Yeah, hopefully you can get out and enjoy a little bit of the weather. I was looking through your schedule here. So if you want to follow along with Fort Lewis, obviously you can connect up with Coach Jansen on Twitter. I think that's where we first connected. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So connect up with him on Twitter. If you can on really short notice, try to register. I don't even know if your registration is still open for the elite camp. But is it?
Yeah, it is. It's this weekend.
Okay. But on January 11th, 2025, it's a Saturday, according to the internet. Fort Lewis will be playing at Westminster University. So if you're here in Salt Lake City and you want to go check them out, it's really eye-opening, I will tell you, to go watch some Division II basketball, especially in the RMAC. And you will realize the level of skill and physicality is way more than you probably think. So, go check them out. Coach, I really appreciate you coming on and for your journey and for sharing your story. And I just hope that people got something out of it. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
All right, bye.